Well, hi again, everybody. This is Craig Hamilton Parker, your psychic medium. This is Coffee with Craig, in which we discuss all things paranormal, all things psychic, and look at the world through spiritual eyes, we hope, through the eyes of a psychic medium, and maybe have a look at what's going to happen and the way ahead in the world. So today we are faced with riots erupting in California. We see streets ablaze. We see Mexican flags flying high while the stars and stripes burns. Obviously, very difficult times. Are the governments of the world paralyzed and unable to act? Because this is not just an American crisis. This is a warning to all of us in Western Europe. We're not immune. We're opening our borders, we've silenced our police, and we've abandoned common sense in favor of cowardness. Is this the case? We'll discuss this in today's episode of Coffee with Craig and maybe try to look ahead a little bit, see how this may pan out in the future. So, welcome to Coffee with Craig. Well, thanks for joining the show again. And if you're here for the first time, do please follow the channel. And as I say to you every time, guys, please try to give us a thumbs up if you can. It helps the algorithm tremendously, particularly with these somewhat contentious videos that I make nowadays. Okay, as a psychic, where do I feel this is all going? Well, first of all, years ago, quite some years ago, and I think it was just before Trump even took office, actually, I made a prediction that there would be a great divide growing within the United States. This would not just be political, but spiritual. In fact, I said that the divide would be between the East and the West of the United States. And now it's beginning to happen, isn't it? It's like we're now seeing that divide explode into open conflict. We're almost getting, in a way, two divisions, two parts of the United States. We're getting this Californian America and the rest of it. And maybe New York also is kind of throwing in a bit with the Californian stuff. But certainly we're seeing a great division happening in the United States already. And this is worrying because what happens in America usually blows across the world and affects other places as well. And what you're seeing on the streets of California is not just a random thing, you know. It's karmic in many ways. It's part of perhaps the dark fruits of a long developing spiritual collapse. In yogic terms, in the sort of terms of the NAADI and things like that I talk about here, we're in the grip of Kali Yuga, or the ending of a great era of darkness called Kali Yuga. And this dark cycle is beginning to change over and come to its end. But when it does happen, we do get a lot of social disruption and worldly disruption. It's going to be a time ahead for a little bit longer, I'm afraid, a time of confusion, a time of lawlessness, a time of moral collapse. And it's also behind it, though, there's also a process of gradual renewal as we enter the next stage. And we have to have courage, and particularly courage to face the truth of those things that are going on in the world at the moment. So what's really happening here? Because, you know, we have to talk plainly about these things, really, because some are saying, oh, these are just protests. These are peaceful protests that have been gone out of control. Well, it doesn't look like it to me when you look at the footage, does it? They're violent uprisings, and we're seeing Mexican flags replacing American ones and cars in flames. I mean, in particular in Los Angeles, the National Guard came out, and possibly they're talking about even the Marines are on their way and they've been deployed. And this is the first time in I believe it's in 60 years since anything like this has happened, because Trump activated what I think is called Title 10, which I don't really know much about, but I basically gave him the ability to bring in federal troops, because he said that California was not able to handle this on their own, even though they weren't called in. It all happened when 120 illegals were arrested. But most of these, I'm not sure, but I believe most of these were already released. So what's the message this sends to the public? And we get exactly the same things here in the UK and in the Europe. You know, are our laws meaningless? Here in the UK, we talk about two-tier policing. There's one lot of policing for those on the right, and there's one lot of policing for those on the left. If anybody's waving a Palestinian flag, we turn a blind eye. If anybody's waving a British or English flag, then we clamp down hard on it. Something's going wrong here. That means that law-abiding citizens no longer matter. Same problem in America, same problem in the UK, same problem recently in Paris, didn't we? It seems almost unthinkable to be talking about these things so soon after the Paris riots, because people watch stuff on TV and they watch stuff on X, and these ideas begin to spread. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this ahead. But Trump is just doing what he promised, really, isn't he? He's targeting illegal immigration head on, expelling those that have broken into the country. And what does Gavin Newsom say? That it's cruel. Well, it's cruel. Is it cruel to defend a nation's borders? Is it cruel to deport criminals? Or is it cruel to let law-abiding citizens live in fear? And exactly the same here. In the UK, we had this problem with the Rwanda deportations. It was a cruel thing. It cannot be done. A person might be a terrorist, but they still got a right to a family life. That was one of the get-rounds we had here in the UK. So these are dangerous things, I think. And there's a lot of loud and sometimes dangerous voices out there. I mean, people like Stephen Miller there in the USA, love him or hate him, of course. He said, deport the invaders or surrender to insurrection. And that's a tough statement that people are coming out with things like this. But honestly, it's starting to feel like rebellion in slow motion. And what's happening in America happens around the world. We're going to start seeing more of this in the UK. We're going to see much more of this in Europe. And we're going to see more of it in the United States, I believe, because all Trump is doing really, and is he's basically asserting his authority. He's asserting his authority over Newsom, and people are watching it, particularly in the UK. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I know that's a contentious thing to say, and people say, oh, you're all for Donald Trump. But no, I'm not really. I'm just for the people. What is happening here? Is this really what people want? They voted to expel criminals, people that are illegally come into our countries. These are not people that have come in because they've gone through the due process. And it's not helping the people that have settled here already and made good lives for themselves and been a great benefit to our country. This is not a racism thing, because as soon as you say these things, people say, oh, it's racist. It's not racist. We're basically talking about anybody breaking in. If people broke into your home, whatever color they were or whatever race they came from, it wouldn't be a racist thing that they'd broken into your home, just as they've broken into your country. And we've seen this in Paris just recently. There were pretty violent pictures that I put up recently of what happened in Paris. And was this a football match? And was the one in America basically a protest? You know, when you look at what's going on in the streets there, you'll see that it's not just protests. It's not just football supporters. There's true riots going on. There's insurrections happening in our countries. And will we soon see it in London? These things could break out anywhere. And in Britain, we've created zones where the police still do not really dare to enter. Yes, they do enter. That's probably an exaggeration to say that, but they have to tread so lightly that the law is not enforced with the true spirit of the law. It's this two-tier policing we talk about here in the UK. Do you agree with me, or do you think I'm talking a load of nonsense here? Please give me a comment on that. Have you experienced these things in your own life, or is this just media hype, or is it is there something really deeply going on with this? But you know, we've let gang cultures fester, I believe, and criminal networks grow within those situations. And now we also hear here in the UK that Nigel Farage is saying that if he does come into power, he won't deport illegals if he came into power. So is he strong enough even? Is he the sort of person that's going to sort things out as he claims? But would he have any real choice? Would he have any real choice after we've had these things escalate, perhaps with a weak Labour government for some years yet? What sort of state would the country get into? What sort of mood would there be? What would the spirit of the UK's energy be by that time? He might have to follow a similar line to Trump, and we might already see that starting to happen, particularly in places like France or even Germany. And we already see it in the Netherlands, and we're seeing it also in the Scandinavian countries where people have had enough of this. They want the law enforced. Can anybody blame you? And we can also bring in here in the UK, for example, we can bring in emergency powers just like they are in America. We have here, I think it's called the 2004 Civil Contingencies Act, if I got it right, which allows military involvement if the country's under threat, and if these were classed as a threat to the country, we could turn back the boats. But could we really act? Will we do it? Is there a politician here in the UK strong enough to even consider doing things like that? Or am I talking too far with this? Should we be using the law to do these things? Or has that proven to be too weak for us to actually get any real results from it? So what do I see? What's ahead? Well, obviously, I foresee more riots. I've already said that, not just in America, but across the Western world. I also feel that martial law is going to become much more common and perhaps even kind of normalized. We might see these type of martial law crackdowns on protests happening in America particularly, and throughout Europe, as well as more and more people start to protest on streets over issues that sometimes perhaps are not really our country's concern. I mean, right, we should be upset about what goes on in Gaza and things, but is it something that we really want to see protested on our street? Do we really want to see these silly boats of entitled people going over to Gaza and being stopped by the Israeli boats and so forth? This kind of daft, self-indulgent sort of protest going on. I mean, we do really need some real strong rule, I think, nowadays. And that's a worrying thing to say, because it's a worrying time. But I say that this martial law, like it or not, is going to become much more normalized in the years ahead. And I sense that governments across Europe are going to be at breaking point, because the governments across Europe are going to be in a state where they're going to be out of power unless they act. So all the parties are going to have to start taking this issue on board. And because we're going to come to breaking point if we continue in action. And I have been saying for some years on this channel that everything's going to be moving very much to the right, particularly in Europe, and it's starting to happen, of course, in we get many places, Italy as well, I didn't mention. So this idea of support for strong men is going to be growing again, and I'm not saying that this is a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying this is what I'm seeing. And there's going to be much more calls for strong leadership, and this will grow even among minority voters. And the other thing, I feel there's going to be a lot more revelations ahead, particularly about the interference of foreign powers like Russia and China. Those things are going to be exposed more. I mean, here in the UK, absolute madness that they're allowing the I think it was part of the Royal Mint or something like that, the big building that's being taken over by the Chinese, right in the heart of London, right on all the main cables that interconnect with all the financial centres in the world. A potential point that could be used to basically shut down the finances of the world, and we let the Chinese go in there when we've got many serious concerns with China at the moment. So these exploitations of Western weakness, we're going to see much more of this revealed. Evidence of this type of thing is going to be shown. We're going to see evidence of this. It's been squashed for a long time, but I feel that it's not just paranoia. It's the natural income of years of spiritual and political erosion. So those things, I'm afraid, are ahead. So what about the far left and social breakdown generally? Because, you know, we talk a lot about the far right, but really the main, most perhaps militant and perhaps the most violent part of society seems to be the far left, which has become very militant. We see this in these type of protests and insurrection that is plaguing Los Angeles particularly. We get these Antifa style groups. They wear masks, they burn properties, they target their political enemies, and they're often protected by people like Soros-backed DAs and things like that who refuse to prosecute. And meanwhile, if you're on the right or just traditionalist, actually, you face arrest, you face censorship, you face cancellation. It's a two-tier justice system, and it's not just in America, it's in the UK as well. And when the Trump supporters protest, many are arrested just for standing nearby. But now, looting, burning, violence, no consequences to this. This is international division that's happening in many places around the world, and it's a great sadness, really, because we should be coming together as peoples. We should be encouraging proper integration. We should be looking to a better form of multiculturalism, which is under the one umbrella of the one culture of the nation which they live. Certainly tolerate other cultures and things, but not say we've got to have multiple cultures. We have one umbrella, which is us. We are America, or we are Britain, or we are France, and we live under the banner of that. And we have our differences, and many cultures integrate very well with this, particularly the Sikhs and the Indians, I've said before, and the Jewish people even up to as well, although they have their separateness as well and their separate rules and things. I think we have to look at all these type of things, particularly Islam, and how it seems to stand against our societies and wants its own rule base, which surely can't be allowed. So, you know, so there's many odd things going on, and I think most people here feel the same thing. I certainly know in the UK that many people feel that this out of control migration and immigration and illegal immigration, because migration as well is a problem. There's too much of it in a small country like the UK, and even the USA is straining in some areas. I mean, California is straining under the import of so many millions of people. And so is it a big surprise, for example, that many Latino voters in the USA voted for Trump? Because they're seeing their own problems. They're seeing the same chaos in their communities, and they don't want it either. Same with many of the ethnic groups here in the UK. They don't want it. They don't want all this. They spent years building good reputations, building good businesses, becoming lawyers and leaders of our society, and even prime ministers here in the UK and so forth. They came here for safety and opportunity, and the same thing in America. They came to our countries for safety and opportunity, and they were vetoed, and we knew they weren't criminals, and we knew they were decent people, and they weren't part of this lawlessness and this gang warfare. We imported good people, and they integrated, and became a good society. But now we're getting very dangerous things. It's shaking the whole foundations of Western culture, and we cannot deny this. In fact, in California, the Democrats have completely lost control, really, and I think you've got to say Trump's message of law, order, and protection is resonating with people. And I don't know how you feel when you watch these programs. What do you think? Do you think, oh, this is terrible? This is like the student riots and the riots that went on in the 60s, which were so unfair, where people were fighting for black rights and things. Is it that? Or is it just chaos of people who shouldn't be here creating problems in our societies? What do you think? I mean, I'm not saying what's right or wrong here. I mean, I think we've got all people are people, but you just can't. It's not a practical thing. Like here in the UK, our system is creaking under so many people coming into the country, where you can't get medical treatment quickly. You can't get our welfare system's going to fall apart soon. Our infrastructure's full of potholes and the rest of it. We just haven't got the money to support all these people that haven't put into the society over the years of their working life. They just come here and taken and not spent years and years paying through their national insurance contributions and taxes to help build a society to support people, for example, in old age, or when they're sick, or when they're out of work and so forth. So, it's a very difficult thing, particularly people coming in that have come here under false pretenses through language schools and then stayed, or over boats. If they come over to the UK on an aeroplane and they say you haven't got your right passport, they send you back again straight away. Yet you come over on a boat and you're welcomed. So the same problems that are happening in LA are bubbling under the surface here in the UK. And are foreign powers abroad watching all this? Of course they are. For those that are our enemies, and I think Russia is one of our enemies, we have to say, I think Putin is probably sitting back with his popcorn watching all this, laughing as America tears itself apart, laughing as Europe tears itself apart, and China and others want to see the West fail. It's in their interest. And if we let this sort of thing fester and we don't deal with it, we'll hand them the victory without a single bullet being fired. America is setting a precedent. If they can take back control through law and courage, I feel, then maybe Europe will follow. If not, the whole of the Western project is at risk. So I think we're at a turning point, really, spiritually, politically, socially. We're tithering on collapse, but we could also find a rebirth coming out of this. The yuga cycles, as I spoke about, teaches that darkness reaches a peak before the light returns. But the light only returns if we're willing to fight for it. Not with weapons, of course, not with insurrection, of course, but with truth, with law, with the courage to stand up for what's right. And we need to have spiritual insight with this. It can't be a blind thing. It can't be a politically driven thing. It can't be anger driven or anything like this. It has to, practical action has to come with a spiritual mindset, with care, with love of our society, love of our nations, love of our democracies, love of the things that have been built in our countries over centuries, to give all the things that we have in this modern age, where we don't have to till the fields every day, or we don't have to live in repressive under landlords and Sheriff of Nottingham type characters and so forth. We've built a society, we've built democracies, and okay, we moan about them, but they're precious things and they can so easily crumble. So we've got to keep fighting in a way, and we've got to keep fighting with spirituality and also with practical action. Or will we all go the same ways as what's been happening in Los Angeles? Will we all go the same ways as what's been happening in Paris and every other city where these things have failed and chaos rules? I think it's time that we look at these things with real brutal honesty, really. We have to be honest. Our societies are at risk. And although I make predictions on this channel and I talk about the good and bad things to come, like I feel there will be a spiritual awakening in due course and so forth, but all of it is dependent on our free will. All of it is dependent upon our actions. We can't sit back and say, oh, it's all going to be all right. Craig said there's going to be a new age, and others have said similar things. Well, yes, but all of these have to be brought in. Otherwise, it could be centuries and centuries away. We could bring it now. We can bring the good things into our world right now, because each of us has I suppose a spirituality that's like a magnet that can attract good things into the world. We see these horrible things on TV. We see all these horrible things going on, and we think, oh, the world's had it. The West is burning. We've lost it. We've lost it. We've lost it. And yes, we must take practical action to stop these things. We must be honest with ourselves that the things that have been going on are not working. But we also must have compassion for other people too. And that doesn't mean just letting every crook be given entry to get away with whatever they do, whether it be breaking through a border or we ignore the law and things like that. And, we have to have law, we have to have justice, we have to have a system, and yet with it it must also come hand in hand with compassion and is what is best for the society at large. Okay, those are my thoughts for today. Hopefully that resonated a bit with you, but if you didn't, please do tell me. Say in the comments, am I wrong? Is this right, what we're talking here? Or am I sort of some crazy person that's gone off on some spiritual right-wing nutcase trip? It's not left or right. It's basic common sense, I think, these things. But I'd love to see your comments. And also, thank you all of you who've been supporting the patrons of this site. Thank you all of you who've become members of the YouTube to help keep the site going. The more you can help me through the patron site, the more you can help me through the YouTube type of upgrade sort of thing when you click at the bottom and below. When all of that allows you to make more videos, it gives me a little bit more time to do these sort of videos. So the more you give, the more I'm able to help. All right, thanks for joining me. See you soon. Bye for now. So do you like what I have to say? Do you like my work? Well, why don't you support my work? Have a look in the description below to go to my website, find out about psychic readings, find out about our NAADI readings with the Indian NAADI Oracle, buy my books and join my workshops online by Zoom. All there on the website psychics.co.uk.